Why is steel one of our 5 safest industries?
What makes a modern home more secure than a stone castle?
Where's the laundry that can roll along the highways?
How did this pastime lead to a new industry?
Industry on Parade, a brand new look at our America, produced on film each week by the National Association of Manufacturers.
A careless match, fire in a wastebasket. Why don't the drapes catch fire? Not a chance. The house could burn down first. Those drapes have been treated with a flame-proofing compound developed at Treesdale Laboratories and Textile Processing Company in Pittsburgh. Many thousands of dollars were spent in exhaustive industrial research before they came up with a method of treating cotton so it would react to flame like the fabric on the right rather than like the untreated cotton cloth on the left. Man has been seeking ways of controlling fire ever since he learned how to use fire 100,000 years ago. Here they concentrated on controlling fire of the sort that causes thousands of deaths each year in flaming mattresses alone. And they finally developed a ticking that just won't ignite. Why it won't is, understandably enough, a trade secret. We are allowed to film the mixing of chemicals, but what those chemicals are is not divulged. Shipped to textile plants all over the country, the liquid is impregnated into fibers of the cloth like this. The excess chemical is then squeezed out under 25 tons of pressure, and what remains is there for the life of the fabric, despite repeated washings or dry cleanings. The cloth is dried by being run over a series of heated rollers. Actually, in the beginning, it was neither for drapes nor mattress tickings that a flame-proof cloth was most urgently needed. Rather, it was for cotton work clothes to protect welders, burners, and other workmen whose activities necessarily expose them to flying sparks. Nowhere has the effectiveness of the flame-proof fabric been more dramatically demonstrated than in the safety-conscious steel industry. In plants like this Wheeling Steel Corporation mill at Steubenville, Ohio, men work close to spitting molten steel at close to 3,000 degrees. Sparks hit their clothing all the time. But the worst that happens is the charring of outer layers. The cloth just won't burn. Hard to believe it while watching scenes like these, but the determined application of safe operating methods, of which flame-proof clothing is just an example, have made the steel industry one of the 5 safest in the country. Steelmaking is still a hot job calling for real men, but advances in industrial safety have ensured that it's not the dangerous job it might otherwise be, and in some countries still is.
In this land of ours, freedom of opportunity for every individual to work at an available job for which he is qualified is an objective of the American way of life. The employment of individuals and their assignment to jobs should be determined by matching the individual's skills and qualifications with the requirements of an available position. And under our system of free competitive enterprise, these objectives can best be achieved through voluntary methods.
Here's a company that produces in great quantities an article that, in spite of the huge output, is almost as distinctive as a fingerprint. Recognize it? It's a cylinder barrel for the lock on a door. We're at Sargent & Company in New Haven, Connecticut, where this young lady is busy cutting slots the length of the barrel to match the ridges that run the length of the key. The number of slots, their widths, and their spacing are just some of the variables that permit the making of millions of door locks, each of which requires a key of its own. But the greatest variation is in the length of the pins. Only the correct key, with cuts matching all the pins, will allow the barrel to turn and the lock to open. Just one cut on the key is off as little as 1/1000th of an inch. The corresponding pin will slip down and prevent the barrel from turning. Now, assembly. The spindle goes into the shank, the cylinder goes into the doorknob, and then knob and shank are joined, and that's only the beginning. As the sub-assembly is being tested elsewhere in the plant, they're putting together the latch bolt assembly, the part that actually bolts the door, barring entry to anyone except the person carrying the right key. More and more, over the years, lock makers have been turning away from the old-fashioned bit key lock, as it's called, in favor of the cylinder lock. The reason, of course, is greater security. A bit key lock is easy to pick, a cylinder lock almost impossible. And for the cylinder lock, there's no such thing as a skeleton key. Here they stamp out the key blanks. Except for size, they're as alike as peas in a pod, until they get those distinguishing bits and slots. Some homeowners order all locks in their homes keyed alike, but otherwise, you'd have to go far to find two locks that any one key would fit. Whether he lives in a big apartment house or a tiny cottage, a man's home is his castle. And our lock manufacturers are giving us greater protection than King Arthur got from all his moats and towering bastions.
Ships of the fleet crammed with the latest complex equipment. But here's the machine which, during World War II, most amazed the sailors of other nations. The seagoing washing machine. Foreign seafarers hadn't known machine laundering at home. American sailors had, and they managed to bring the same convenience with them even when Ma was no longer around to string up the line, put the clothes through the wringer, rinse them, wring them out again, and hang them up to dry. This wartime model wasn't much by today's standards, but it did beat washing clothes by hand in a bucket. Today, in plants like that of the Whirlpool Corporation at St. Joseph, Michigan, our washing machine manufacturers are again contending with the same problem they faced in making compact washers for tiny ships. Now, the space problem is found in small homes and apartments, and they're solving it, in part at least, with fabulous tools like this one that can take a piece of pre-cut steel, wrap it snugly around a small but sturdy frame, and weld it permanently in place. After having a porcelain enamel finish baked on, the parts are assembled into a unit vastly more complicated, though not a great deal larger, than the one we saw in use on shipboard. More complicated because now a washing machine does a lot more things than it used to. It regulates water temperature, goes through a whole cycle of washings, rinsings, and damp drying automatically. It'll even store the hot, soapy water away during the rinsing to be used again as many times as desired. There have been drastic changes in our living habits during the past 20 years. The electric washing machine that a generation ago was a novelty found only in the homes of the rich, today is almost as universal as inside plumbing. Even a family living in a trailer can now enjoy not only automatic washing, but automatic drying as well. For they found ways to crowd convenience Grandma never dreamed of into a smaller area than she would have required just to store her galvanized iron wash tubs.
There is no secret to America's tremendous production of goods at prices we can afford to pay. It is simply that our productivity, the amount of goods turned out by employees in every hour at work, has continued to increase year in and year out. This, combined with the skilled use of machines and managerial techniques, has enabled American industry to turn out more and more products at less cost. And this great outpouring of goods has meant an ever-increasing standard of living for all Americans.
balancing act on a railroad track. Ever know a youngster who didn't like to demonstrate his mastery over the law of gravity? Probably not. It's a boyhood pleasure the world over. And when you add an ice cream cone, brother, you're really living. Little Jeff here suspects the fence may be a little too high. But if the others can do it, so can he. Or break an arm trying. Come on, Jeff, they're way ahead of you. And here he comes, sure-footed as a mountain lion, or a young mountain lion anyway. This urge to make like a tightrope walker is not confined to the male sex, nor to the very young, as we find at a party in Atherton, California. That device they're trying to conquer is called a Bongo board, introduced into this country by an Air Force veteran who saw children all through Africa and Asia playing with something very much like it. Back home, he built one for his own children, but found his adult friends monopolizing the thing. The result? A new business was formed, and all over the country, parties that start out quietly enough are ending up like this. Looks idiotically simple, but you have to be an expert to stay on for more than a few seconds, and it's the challenge that keeps bringing them back for more. When the small fry come in and show Pop up, you can be sure Pop is making a silent resolution to do some practicing. The company that has grown up around this gadget, Washburn-Decker Industries Incorporated, is mushrooming on both coasts. The board on which you stand, or try to stand, is made of marine plywood. Tacked to a template, its corners are rounded on a shaper. The rollers are made of billets, which are transformed into perfect cylinders automatically. Into that groove in the center of the roller will fit a tongue attached to the bottom of the board to keep the board from sliding off the end of the roller. Here's where they fix the tongue in place, and also the stops that let the board roll only so far. Several coats of varnish, rubber treads at either end, and that's about it. The company doesn't know what to call the product, a toy, a balancing game, or a piece of athletic equipment. They don't care much either, just as long as this sort of thing continues. It's obvious that the older generation's been having some secret workouts. This is something boys in the Near East, Middle East, and Far East have been doing for many generations. Now, American boys get into the act. American boys of all ages.
In America, free men and women work together as a team to produce more and better things in less time for more pay than anywhere else in the world. American employees are asked their frank opinions about their jobs and the companies they work for. Some companies don't wait for formal complaints. Surveys are conducted to find out exactly what's on the employee's mind. Through face-to-face talks, employee publications, and suggestion systems, American industry constantly strives to improve employee-employer relations.
Industry on Parade visits a Newark firm which, though it has only 45 employees, is a giant in its field, the field of restoring old books. Though this may not look much like restoration, getting rid of the old cover is the first step in the process here at Rademacher Bookbinding Company. After mending torn pages and sanding old stitching and glue off the spine of the book, they sew the pages together again. The books come here for rebinding from a variety of sources, schools and public libraries, of course, and private collectors. But some of the more important customers are industrial libraries, maintained by companies in every imaginable field. A reflection of the emphasis being placed on industrial research. After resewing, the edges are retrimmed. Obviously, rebinding a book is a more difficult process than was binding it in the first place. And that's why it's worthwhile only with volumes that are out of print or otherwise exceptional or valuable. Knowing this, the people in the shop treat every book that comes through with the loving care it usually deserves. Here, the spine is re-rounded. Covers of a washable plastic called library buckram are glued to cardboard stiffeners and fitted to the books they will enclose. Then they're removed and finished off all around. Because of the individual skilled attention given each volume and the quality of materials used, a book after rebinding like this is far stronger than it ever was before. In addition to rebinding old books, the firm does an increasing amount of binding of trade publications and important papers, especially for those growing business and industrial libraries we mentioned. Finally, the new cover and the reconstructed book are joined. After standing overnight in an 800-pound press, the books are ready to go out and begin their second life of service. Centuries ago, European monks, painfully copying old documents by hand, maintained our contact with the past. Today, knowledge of the thinking of those who have gone before is kept alive in large part through the arts and skills of the bookbinder. On Parade, Peabody Award winner for public service, produced on film each week by the National Association of Manufacturers.
On George's Shoal in the North Atlantic, 110 miles east of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, the nearest land, a man-made island on stilts rises 85 feet above the ocean surface. It's the first of a string of 5 offshore radar stations designed to fill a serious chink in our aircraft warning defense system. With a group of engineers, newsmen, and others, an Industry on Parade cameraman goes aboard for a first inspection of the tower after it is placed in operation. Access to the platform is by means of a whaleboat raised by a winch. Some of the visitors represent private industries that made important contributions to the design and direction of this unique structure, which is a highly modified version of the Texas towers used in drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico. One such visitor is William Dewey, a partner in the Boston engineering firm of Anderson, Nichols and Company, the gentleman in glasses. He directed an engineering survey for the Navy to prove the feasibility of putting up the tower here in some of the stormiest waters in the world, then developed plans for carrying out the difficult assignment. Diesel generators develop enough power for radio, radar, heating, lighting, air conditioning, cooking, and the other needs of some 70 Air Force, Navy, Weather Bureau, and Coast Guard personnel who are stationed out here for 30 days at a time. A chaplain is one of the 70 men assigned to the lonely duty. The predominant reason for erecting these 6,000-ton islands of steel was to give the Air Defense Command the vital 20 minutes advance notice of the approach of unknown aircraft toward the East Coast. Thus, around the clock, radar and radio men check on all flights in the area covered by their equipment. At word from this operations room, jet fighter planes at bases on the coast scramble in a matter of seconds and roar out to sea to intercept potential attackers. Happily, this proves to be a dry run. An unexpected aspect of the tower's usefulness is revealed when a sailor aboard a destroyer in the area is seriously injured in a fall. He's transferred to the tower as a hurry-up call is put in for a helicopter from the mainland. Less than an hour after his fall, the sailor will be in a hospital ashore, getting the best of treatment. Did we say this efficient handling of the situation was unexpected? With the defense problems that exist in today's world being what they are, nothing can be unexpected. The military and the American industries that back them up are doing their level best to be ready for anything.
Population experts tell us we'll number 220 millions by 1975, 60 millions more than now. These new Americans will need many things, and today's luxuries will be tomorrow's necessities. Machine development will make this dream a reality. In addition to goods of every description, Americans in 1975 will need more jobs to support an expanding population. Can we have wonderful and more efficient machines and jobs in increasing numbers at the same time? The history of industry says we can. The practice of industry says we will.
In the evaporating room of a food processing plant, carefully applied heat drives off the moisture from liquid foods, preparing them for transformation into dry solids. Powdered milk and eggs, instant coffee and sugar are just a few of the dry foods processed in this way. And the food industry is only one of many using such equipment. Chemical, paper, and petroleum refining plants are some of the others that turn to firms like Goslin Birmingham Manufacturing Company of Birmingham for the evaporators so necessary to their operations. Though the equipment is generally massive and constructed of heavy gauge metals, it must be assembled with scrupulous attention to the close tolerances indicated on the blueprints. Roll forming even such heavy plate as this into perfect cylinders presents no serious problem, but giving the metal more complicated forms, cone shape for example, calls for the skill of long experience. This is one of those industries whose products are sold only to other industries, never to the general public. But as consumers of the products processed in equipment like this, we are all as vitally concerned with the quality and cost of such machines as though there were one in every basement. After the sub-assemblies are completed, they're brought together for welding. Here's where careful attention to the blueprints pays off, for all abutting surfaces must jibe perfectly and almost invariably do. As heating element and vapor head are welded together, a constant check is made to be sure there is no distortion. A cumbersome piece of equipment and an unfamiliar one to most of us. But as we fill our gasoline tanks, read our morning newspaper, or spoon sugar into our coffee, we might remember that without efficient equipment like this in the factories, all those products and many others would be far more costly to buy, or perhaps might not be available at any price.
We Americans are always trying to find better ways of doing things. Our forefathers, who pioneered and discovered new frontiers in this country, have been supplanted by the scientists and technicians in American industries' laboratories. Every day, every week, every year, someone is discovering a new product or improving an old one which will benefit all of us. Each year, industry spends more than $2.5 billion in research that creates new jobs, more and better products, which help all of us to continually improve our standard of living.